That morning looked ordinary, until the sky did something no one could explain. Imagine standing in a baseball stadium in broad daylight. Number storm? No panic, no warning. And then suddenly, two bright metallic objects slice across the sky. Not in a rumor, not in a sketch, not in someone's shaky memory years later. On film. And that is exactly why this case never faded away. Because when the world asks, did anyone ever really capture a UFO on camera that early? The Mariana film is one of the first names that rises out of history. Welcome to MythXray. It was the morning of August 15th, 1950. In Great Falls, Montana, and everything seemed normal. The air was calm, the day was bright, and there was no sign that anything unusual was about to happen. But within moments, an incident would unfold that would live on for decades as one of America's earliest and most debated filmed UFO cases. At Legion Stadium, Nick Mariana was going about his day. He was the general manager of the local minor league baseball team, and with him was his secretary. Then, in an instant, something caught Mariana's eye. A sudden flash in the sky. He looked up, and what he saw did not look ordinary. Two bright, silvery objects were moving overhead. Their appearance was strange enough, their motion unusual enough, that Mariana immediately grabbed his 16mm camera and began filming. The moment was brief, but it was enough to make history. According to Mariana, the objects were moving at a speed of several hundred miles per hour. They passed across the sky and disappeared just as quickly as they had appeared. But this was no longer just a witness story. This time, there was film. Something had been captured. Something real had crossed the frame. That is what made the Mariana UFO film so important. In an era when most UFO stories depended entirely on eyewitness testimony, this case offered moving picture footage. It became one of the earliest and most famous UFO films in American history. The incident was taken seriously enough that the U.S. Air Force examined it under Project Blue Book. Later, in 1953, the Robertson Panel also reviewed it as one of the notable UFO films of its time. At first, the Air Force offered a more ordinary explanation. Officials suggested the objects were probably reflections from two F-94 jet fighters known to be in the area. On paper, that sounded like a clean solution, but the case did not stay settled for long. Over time, that explanation was challenged again and again. Some investigators argued that the film could indeed show jets or sunlight reflections. Others pushed back, saying the brightness, motion, and overall appearance did not match ordinary aircraft closely enough. And that is where the mystery deepened. When the Robertson Panel later reviewed the case, it noted that Navy photo analysts had spent around 1,000 man-hours studying both the Mariana film and the Utah film. Their conclusion was striking. They reported that the objects were not birds, not balloons, not aircraft, and not simple reflections, but Eben 10. The story did not end there. The panel itself did not fully accept that conclusion. Instead, it leaned back toward more conventional explanations, especially reflective objects or birds. That tension is exactly why this case still matters. Because the honest historical truth is not that aliens were proven, and not that the whole thing was debunked beyond doubt. The truth is more uncomfortable and far more interesting. The film is real. The objects were genuinely recorded, but what those objects actually were remains disputed. And maybe that is why the Mariana film still pulls people in after all these years. On one side, there are official investigations, military reviews, and expert analysis. On the other, there is the same haunting question that has followed humanity every time it looks into the unknown sky. Did we really explain what was seen? Or did we simply choose the explanation that felt safe? The significance of this case is not just that someone claimed to see a UFO. It is that a camera was there, A real strip of film preserved that moment. Later, a public version of the footage became available through Wikimedia Commons, where it is treated as public domain in the United States. A Project Blue Book report on the Great Falls case is also publicly indexed online, giving the incident a documented place in history rather than leaving it as just another rumor passed from one generation to the next. And when you strip the story down to its clearest conclusion, this is what remains. The Mariana UFO film stands out because it is one of the earliest filmed UFO cases. It was tied to an official Air Force investigation. It was later examined by a high-level review panel. And yet, its explanation never became universally accepted. That is what makes it remarkable. Not certainty, but evidence without closure. Not fantasy, but a real mystery caught on film. Goodbye.